And I think my third or fourth attempt, and now I finally bring you the full review of the LEICA SUMMILUX 1.4, which some deem is the best portrait lens ever made for LEICA M-Out. Join me as I head to Poland to teach a LEICA workshop, and then I'm going to compare the lens to the THYPOCH 1.4, the lens I've reviewed before. You'll see sample photos, and the popular VOIGTLANDER Nocturne 1.5. All that coming up, sample photos and everything you need to know. Hey guys, Matt here from MrLeica.com. So as a model photographer, portrait photographer, and also a massive LEICA fan, I'm always looking for the best possible lens when it comes to portraits. This lens has been on my radar for what feels like ever, but as I don't own the lens, it's thanks to my students that's allowed me to make this video possible. I teamed up with Sundeep again. First we teamed up in London. One of our previous workshops I didn't make a video, but the results were inconclusive, so the video ended up being about the lighting, not the lenses themselves. Here you can see some of the sample photos from that video. All three lenses are going to be tested again in this video, but this time I'm going to go more of a deep dive and find out once for all which is the winner. So I was in Gdansk, Poland. Sundeep joined me from London, and then he brought his SUMMILUX lens. I took my THYPOCH and my Nocturne, and then I was able to do all three lenses side by side on my LEICA SL2S, and then I was shooting film with my M7. So before we get into the lens, let me tell you a bit more about our location. So we're in Poland on the north coast. You can see Gdansk, one of my favourite places. I've been going for about 15 years. Absolutely love it. It's amazing for model photography, and I love it just running around in the morning taking photos. You can see here I run with my vintage 1930s LEICA camera and do kind of industry kind of travel shots, and then I take my other cameras to shoot with the models. So all the photos you're going to see in this video with the SL2S. If you're interested in my workshops, I can put a link below. I will be there again in October, and I've got one place left, so if you want to join me for either a half day or a full day in Gdansk, you can join me. It's roughly 2 hours 20 minutes from London and around an hour and a half from Munich, to give you a rough idea, so it's quite accessible from most cities. Okay, the lens itself. Older LEICA M cameras like the M2, M3, M4 had no 75mm frame line, but the M4P was the first camera released with 75mm frame line, and so that was when they released the LEICA SUMMILUX 1.4 in 1980s. You can see you got a pair of frame lines. A 50 is the outer line, and the 4 light marks is the inner 75mm frame line. The lens was made in 3 main versions. Version 1, which is the 11814, which is lighter but minimum focus distance of 1 meter. The popular one, which is the 815, which is the lens you're going to see in this video. And then the later one was the 810, but you don't see many of those, and I couldn't find many images online. All of these lenses are pre-spherical, based on the 50mm SUMMILUX pre-spherical, which I've reviewed before in this video. This lens is also fantastic for portraits, so check out that video. Okay, so portraits. So as this lens I think is great for portraits, let's first give you a taster, a sample of what this lens can do for portraits. On the left you've got raw images, on the right with the Mr. Leica preset added, one of my presets, all photos with the SL2S, and then all images shot to wide open. You can see I was using daylight only for many of these photos, especially the outside ones. And then the lens just gives really nice rendering. You can see the trees giving the bokeh effect in the background when shooting the lens wide open at f1.4. You'll see I normally try and shoot close-ish, so around 0.8 meters. The lens actually goes down to 0.75 meters, but it only says 0.8 meters on the lens itself, so it can get a bit confusing. Lens characteristics. First, vignetting. The lens has quite heavy vignetting wide open at 1.4, but it's pretty much gone by around f4 onwards. Chromatic aberration. I zoomed in on a couple of these shots. You can see you've got foreground chromatic aberration, which is like the magenta, and you've got the distant chromatic aberration, which is like the turquoise color, which is normal for a lot of lenses. Lens flare. Now I'm going to start showing compared to the other lenses, so you can see all three lenses flare reasonably similar, more than I expected. And then in terms of bokeh, can you spot the LEICA bokeh? If we zoom in, you can see SUMMILUX on the left, THYPOCH in the middle, VOIGTLANDER on the right. I'd say it's most similar to the THYPOCH, as you can see on the right in this example. Here you can see the background bokeh in kind of real life examples cropped in. And here you can see the foreground bokeh again compared to the THYPOCH. It's very, very similar, as you can see from this crop. Okay, lens sharpness, popular for a lot of people. So first, normal kind of portrait shot wide open. And then if you crop in, you can see they're reasonably similar, kind of this kind of viewing distance. And then if you zoom in even more, Samara may be slightly sharper, and the VOIGTLANDER may be the sharpest. Now let's do a more controlled test of a static subject. Again, the Summilux is the softest, Samara in the middle, and Nocturne as the sharpest, but they're very, very close. Next, sharpness at infinity. If we zoom in on this image, shot wide open at 1.4, you can see it looks a bit soft in the raw image, but when you try to preset, it sharpens up nicely. It looks like a very organic looking, maybe film image from my preset. And so yeah, I'm very happy and more than sharp enough for me for real world use. Now for colours, I think it's closest to the THYPOCH Samara. So if we bring in some crops, the Summilux is maybe slightly greener, where the THYPOCH is slightly pinker, but they're both similar-ish. Size, weight, spec, so it's quite a big lens for an M lens. I'd say better balanced on a SL series body because of the weight and also the size, and also it blocks the viewfinder a bit on an M camera. It actually focuses to 0.75 meters. Here you can see the blockage from a VOIGTLANDER Nocturne, and the Nocturne's smaller, as you can see, so you're going to get even more blockage from the Leica lens. This one weighs 600 grams. This is the version 2, the most popular one. Now, what about alternative 75mm lenses compared to the three we're looking at in this video? You've got the Leica SummiLux 75f2 Apo, which is a lens I used to own. I can put a link to that video below. If you want something cheap and kind of very modern, you've got the 7 Artisans 75 1.4, which I've reviewed very recently. Again, I can put a link below. That lens is very cheap compared to the others, but it is L-mount. In terms of prices, around $2,500 for the Summilux. Same price as SummiLux Apo. Around 636 for the Samara, about 850 for the Nocturne, and only 200 for the 7 Artisans, but that is a softer lens and it is L mount, not M mount. Okay, so what is the verdict and what do I use? What's my choice? So some portrait photographers love this lens. When I teamed up with Peter Coulson a few years ago, he absolutely loved the 75mm on his SL2S camera. You can see me borrowing it there. That was my first attempt to test that lens, but I failed and ran out of time. I think if you're a die-hard Leica fan, you probably enjoy getting this lens over an alternative brand lens. But if I showed you a side-by-side test of photos with the Leica lens and with a different lens, I'm not sure if you'd be able to tell the difference or if I would be able to tell the difference. I'm pretty sure I definitely couldn't tell the difference. And I'm someone that tests lenses. So let's test the theory. So all of these photos I'm going to share now are shot with the THYPOCH Samara 75 1.4, which I believe is the nearest optically to the Leica Summilux in terms of the real world kind of rendering. It's slightly smoother than the Nocturne. The Nocturne's got high contrast, slightly higher sharpness, where the THYPOCH's got more of a cinematic look, more aperture blades than the Leica lens, so it's actually got better bokeh if you stop the lens down. The Leica lens is good if you shoot the lens wide open for bokeh, but as you stop down it gets a bit jagged because of the fewer aperture blades. So the question you may have is, Matt, are you going to buy the Leica Summilux 75mm finally? And the answer is actually no. It's always been on my list, but I'm happy with the Samara results since that came out. I believe that came out last year. I love the Samara on digital and I love the Nocturne on film. I like to use a pair of 75mm lenses so I can shoot both mediums side by side. The Nocturne's just got a bit more bite for film. If you've not yet seen a VOIGTLANDER Nocturne 75 1.5 video, I urge you to check that out. Again, I can put a link to it below. If you want kind of high contrast, shallow depth of field portraits, this lens is fantastic. It just might be a bit too high contrast for some people. And so for those instances, I'd go with the THYPOCH or the Leica if you prefer the Leica brand. I'll pop that video on the screen so you can watch it next. And thanks as always to my amazing patrons.